Welcome to Slow News Day. I'm Steve Poikinen.
And I'm Sarah Hall.
We are here highlighting artists, activists, organizers, and agitators who are pushing back against late-stage capitalism here in the heart of the empire. We are stoked this afternoon to welcome in here to the Wizard Den satirist and author of a new book called An Inconvenient Douche. You would know him as the Twitter personality Peter Douche, and more recently, Peter Douche's liaison. So please welcome in Cote, aka Peter Douche. How are you doing, man?
Awesome, great to be here, guys.
Thanks, man. Thanks for taking some time to hang out with us today. It is entirely possible that you're sick to death of explaining this. So, if you'd like, you can go ahead and make some shit up.
That's my job.
Walk us through how you created this alter ego and then ultimately had to create an alter or an alter character for that alter ego.
Right. So, right when the primaries ended, I wanted some way to go after the bullshit propagandists, and so I picked the most transparent of them all, Peter Dow, and created an account mocking him, which got pretty popular. And then at some point, basically Twitter kicked me off, and I don't know why. They still won't say anything other than that I impersonated him. So, I mean, if I'm impersonating him, what does that say about him? I mean, because I'm not trying to get money from people. What's the purpose? Why am I doing that? So it was blatant bullshit. He probably made some calls to some people at Twitter. I mean, you'll never know. But anyway, so that they kicked me off. So I turned my other account, which actually had more followers, into Peter Douche's liaison. And kind of did a little shtick about being stuck in the embassy, like Julian Assange and WikiLeaks,
The embassy suites.
Yeah, so I played off for that for a bit.
Clever.
And then, the weird thing is, like, when I got kicked off, I woke up the next day and Free Peter Douche hashtag was trending all across the U.S.
Hell yeah!
So that was freaking awesome to see that support. And I mean, I don't think that was really about me. It's just, we're all fighting the censorship, and it was a blatant case of following their rules and still getting kicked off Twitter. So I think that's why people got behind it.
Yeah, that happened to you right around the same time they were quietly cutting out a ton of pro-Palestinian pages.
Yeah, and like just recently, the desanitized folks got kicked off, but they got their account back. So, sometimes we can make a stink and it'll work.
That's true. No, they shut down Caitlin Johnstone for a day or two, and then enough hell was raised about that. I think Twitter is a little bit more flexible than Facebook. It's always there. They specify targeting dissenting voices and control of the narrative in a place as wild as social media is what leads to gutting net neutrality, which kind of leads me to my next question. Which comedians do you get your news from? Because I have this theory that everyone involved in the news is a comedian, whether they know it or not.
Right.
And I found that the people that are more upfront about being comedians are ultimately more upfront in the truth in the news that they deliver.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look back to, so some of the people that inspired me were Colbert and Jon Stewart back in the day. But they were speaking the truth a lot more than they are now. I mean, neither one of those. I still like Jon Stewart, but Colbert's on every night just spewing centrist garbage. I mean, but as far as I listen to a lot, Jimmy Dore and Ron Pacone, Lee Camp. Those guys they're telling the truth, so. I mean, if you turn on regular TV, you're getting a lot of lies, or at least a biased opinion. So, these guys have opinions too, but they don't need to filter themselves for anybody.
Right, yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's awesome that you mentioned Stewart and Colbert specifically. we have a newer thing that we're trying out on the show now called "Why Is This Bullshit?" And I agree with you. I had a lot of love for some Johnny Stew beef back in the day.
Me too.
And I mean, and,
I too.
and I knew that he was giving one-sided coverage, that he was playing for a specific team, and that when he gave shots to the Democrats, it was out of sheer frustration because he genuinely believed that they were decent people. And I think that his opinion has changed a little bit since he spent some time on the farm there in Jersey. But Colbert, man, he just dove right in. They gave him that late night spot, and they all got that memo that we saw in WikiLeaks that said elevate Trump as a Pied Piper candidate and treat him seriously. So he was 100% of the late night coverage, unless they wanted to take a sideways dig at Bernie just so they could prove that they were carrying the right water for the right people.
Right, and what you're going to see now is a lot of Bernie's old jokes on all the shows.
Yes,
because they're going to promote the ageist narrative, and Colbert and those guys. I mean, it's an easy bit to do, but why are they doing it? Are they doing it just because it's funny, or are they actually part of some Democratic?
I still want to hire Jon Stewart to show up at my funeral and just sob and sob and sob, and then leave without saying a word.
All right, so let's go through a couple of headlines and maybe figure out why they're bullshit. And
we got to meet Lee Camp recently. What a delightful human being he was. Steve we got to ask him a couple of questions. He was gracious enough to make a little bit of time for us before he went on stage, and we got to catch his show too. And just a really genuine, heady individual with a lot to say and a way of saying it that really makes you want to listen. So people like that give me a little bit of I don't know, it feels good. And I watched him deliver to my town too, which can be kind of a seedy audience, but they did pretty good for him. I was proud of them, and I really enjoyed his show and his message, and I can tell he's the kind of person that lives it too, just by what was what was on his plate. I'm like, oh, this guy does the deal, man, all the way down the line. Yeah, so I find people like that very inspiring too, and telling it like it is. Doing his own writing.
To dismiss him, and he works for RT, so that's how they just throw everything he has to say out. It's and we're gonna get a lot more of that in the coming year or two.
Oh, absolutely. There's gonna be a more savage and more targeted crackdown of dissenting voices as we get closer to this 2020 primary. Let me read you a headline here real quick, and maybe we can go through why it's just clearly bullshit. Former President George H.W. Bush remembered for his leadership, friendship, and sense of humor.
Oh dear God.
How does Pat Cote remember George H.W. Bush, and how is Peter Douche's liaison remembering George H.W. Bush?
So personally, I remember the Iraq War. I mean, that's kind of hard to forgive. And then his son's Iraq War, the sequel. I mean, a lot of terribleness, a lot of income inequality, a lot of promoting a fake drug war. Peter Douche liaison, though, he's just going to comment that it's great that the son handed Michelle Obama some candy at the funeral today. That's all that really matters is civility among the elitists.
Huh.
I still think that whenever one of those guys dies and they all turn up to the funeral, that we just need to lock the fucking doors until we can convene a war crimes tribunal right outside, and then as they're walking out, just one by one, just fucking shuffle them on off to prison. Like, that would be ideal to me.
Handcuffs.
The guillotine shoot.
George H.W. Bush, I don't know how old you are. I'm 40. I'll be 41 here in about 4 months. But I started on the path of not believing what the news was telling me fairly young. I had a lot of clean LSD in Coast to Coast AM Art Bell, like
deprogramming,
junior high, early high school, and I remember George H.W. Bush for being accused of, at the time, the hip-hop community for bringing crack and cocaine into America through the CIA. And we find out that, like, yeah, that's a thing that happened. And not only is that a thing that happened, it's so part of the national folklore that Tom Cruise gets to go make a movie starring as Barry Seals, the fucking pilot who was bringing cocaine into the fucking States, landing in Mena, Arkansas with the permission and at the behest of then Governor Bill Clinton, and distributing that cocaine throughout America. Like, that's a thing that we just...
Shake hands with Noriega? Like, guilty all the way up to the president?
And
that's what I remember.
Noriega was a CIA agent. I remember Iran-Contra. I remember... of course, I remember the Gulf War, but I remember one of the main selling points for it was Saddam's army came into the hospital and they took the babies out of the incubator and they threw them on the floor and left them to die and stole the equipment because they could sell the equipment on the black market for bombs. That was the story. And it turns out that story is 100% fabricated. So lying us into a war in Iraq is a family fucking tradition.
Amen.
Are you going to go
by the
back?
Way, I saw that movie with Tom Cruise too.
Yeah,
movie.
What was that movie called? I forget what the movie was called.
I'll never remember it, but spot on. I mean, he's burying truckloads of cash in his backyard everywhere. I mean, they just made a killing by working with Noriega and all those guys.
And Noriega was CIA.
And before he was president, what were you telling me today? The Majestic 12?
Oh yeah, and there's a whole
Are you familiar with this? I'm getting excited about.
There's a whole overarching theory that George H.W. Bush was part and parcel of the Kennedy assassination. It's an undeniable fact that he was working for the CIA at the time, but that he went straight from the director of the CIA into the White House as vice president in 1980, and throughout George Bush's time in the White House and his association and blood relation to Bill Clinton and then his kid as the president, we've seen propaganda become legal. We've seen this war on drugs expand incredibly. We've seen these private prisons become.
Man, I just wish I was there to kick his corpse.
Right?
God, Steve, you're again. What else do we got? Man, he was dirty.
I did, yeah. So they're
dirty through and through.
They're honoring this guy as for his sense of humor. This is a guy.
Like I said, it's just the civility factor they appreciate, because they don't want us to be up in arms over how corrupt these guys are. They want us to let them eat dinner in a nice restaurant and not interrupt them.
We're to be seen, not heard.
Bullshit. Yeah.
Schlep my gruel, peasant.
Right.
Right.
I'm totally aware that Mexicans make my food. I just don't want to see that Mexicans are making my food.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just want a virtual moat around themselves still.
Well, that's what they're building literal moats and literal bunkers. I don't know if you saw, there was an article in CNBC over the summer about a guy who went as a tech consultant to a billionaires conference where it turned out to be just 5 billionaires who were like, when shit hits the fan, will it be better for us to put shock collars on our armed security, or should we keep them in? Like, did you see that? Do you know what I'm talking? No. I'll post it on your Pat the Burner.
The brightest Twitter. Minds on earth thought they were there to ask questions like, you know, how do we improve our bottom line, or, you know, where else can we downsize, or whose blood do we drink to retain our youth? But it was about how do we control our private security forces after the event.
And that's just what they called it. That the event was their name for, like, climate disaster or, you know, revolution up here, political up here, whatever. Just the event was their sanitized word for it. We'll do one more headline and then we'll roll on with the rest of it. But the headline was from the Atlantic yesterday, and it says what the Yemen vote reveals about the Democratic Party, and then the subtext is it's finally moving further to the left. And I want to know what your thoughts on this bill that's gone through the House and Senate regarding how we're operating in Yemen.
Well, I mean, we've been funding all these atrocious bombings and the killing of kids and the starving everybody forever. You know, what happens with the bill is yet to be seen, but the fact that Bernie actually got a bill passed by, 67 or whatever the number is, Democrats, shows he's got a lot of power still.
So
I don't think anyone else could
there's a reason why this is in Why Is This Bullshit? And there's
why is this bullshit part I'm curious about.
There's
but yes, go.
There's a
He's
line
just kicked over his drink. He's gonna tell you.
Written in the language of the bill is an exception that says the United States military can keep operating wherever Al-Qaeda or associated forces are operating, as long as it's within like a 30-day period of whenever this bill passes. So as long as it's not past that 30-day period. So there's language written in that says we get to keep doing exactly what we're doing in Yemen. And I don't know if that's an oversight by Bernie Sanders, a compromise by Bernie Sanders, or the way that Bernie Sanders handles foreign policy. In that the celebration is in the act itself, but in the full text of the bill is what still gives the military the power to act as a global empire.
Yeah, and the devil's in the details, you know. It's like, it's not like this is the bill that we're all reading.
Right. Well, it would have flown by. It would have flown by me. There was an article in Mint Press News, and I don't really read their stuff too much. That said, you know, here's what's wrong with the bill in Yemen. But Jamarl Thomas, who's a friend and a friend of the show, had a live stream yesterday. And it was titled, you know, something about like the Yemen bill has a giant loophole in it. So I jumped on over to that, and I don't know if you're familiar with Jamarl or not, or the way that he runs his
Soapbox,
show.
Right?
Yes.
Progressive Soapbox, yeah.
Yeah.
I love him. He's a good guy.
But he's intense, man. He is, and when he's mad at Bernie Sanders, he's genuinely mad at Bernie Sanders. Like, he's not mad because he's some fucking, you know, he's trying to be like fucking Amy Schumer or whatever and just, you know, virtue signal to the power elite. He has genuine concerns.
So I think that's a good thing. I think we all, like, even we were talking before the show about, you know, Ocasio and holding her feet to the fire. The more we're pissed at all of them, the better we all are. Like, just hammer them all. I mean, I think we should give Ocasio a break and wait till she makes her first vote and does a little bit before.
Yeah, I feel like that too. For sure.
Well, yeah, she's not even sworn in yet, for fuck's sake.
Because I'm an idiot and I want to believe in Sorry.
But it's perfectly okay to hammer Bernie too, It's fine to. We don't have to be cultish and not critique these guys. I mean, we're still going to all probably vote for the leftist person that's out there. It just happens to be Bernie.
Let me go to this because I barely got time to look at it. But
you might be cutting because I'm sorry. I think the last little bit of what you said we didn't hear. The sound might have cut out on you. That wasn't Steve interrupting you, just to be clear.
What? Say something, Pat.
Oh.
No, he's there. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't really got a chance to look into this too much, but we talked about it a little bit last night. Anyway, what the fuck is going on in Wisconsin right now? Have you seen any?
Yeah, so I guess all that shit they were trying to do this week passed in Wisconsin. So basically, it's a coup from the GOP. Like they already have all branches of government. They got a supermajority, the governor, but they're trying to strip the AG of his powers. They passed that, so the AG can't do what was it?
The Attorney General, the Secretary of State, and all of them were Democrats.
Right, and a lot of it has to do with. So there's a lawsuit that the state has signed on to try to get the ACA stripped,
okay.
And so the AG was probably going to pull them out of that deal. So they're stripping the AG's power, changing the early voting. They're making the voter IDs more fucked, and I guess that all just passed like today or yesterday. And then same thing's happening in Michigan.
Smash and grab.
Yep, they're just trying to take all the power they can.
At what point does that? I mean, okay, I grew up in the Midwest. I've got family in both Wisconsin and Michigan, and no one in that family is comfortable with the idea of their state government having that much power. Regardless of how Republican or Democrat they are, they're at least independent in that. I think that I would think that they would want to have the ability to directly address their representatives on this, and I haven't seen anything like Wisconsin freaks out, state house, surrounded, like, or
right.
What makes people okay with that shit?
So part of the problem is that, okay, what are we talking about today? Well, the news, it's all Bush dead stuff still. It's Russia. I mean, Democratic leaders aren't even making this a public national issue. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer should be screaming from the rooftops to get people's attention on this. And they're not. They're not doing a fucking thing. And it just tells you how awful they are.
Well, no, they're barely mentioning the outright fraud that apparently happened in North Carolina. We saw blatant voter fraud in Florida, in Broward County, with Brenda Snipes and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, with Brian Kemp in Georgia. Greg Palast is like the only guy running around shouting about this, and he's getting a little bit of airtime here or there. But you're right. It's fucking George H.W. Bush's funeral, and that's why I want to get your opinion on this. Yesterday, Joe Biden came out and he said that he was the most qualified person to run for president in 2020, and I want to know.
Like Hillary qualified.
Hillary qualified. I want to know if you think that, because it seems like the centrists in the national media collectively decided to put Me Too on hold for a little while we put George Bush in the ground, because that guy just a couple of, like, last year was making headlines for grabbing everything that moved, like, throughout his entire life. You know, like, it was an established thing that he had a mistress that he took with him on fucking long trips.
Yeah, and he didn't defend Anita Hill back in the Senate confirmations of Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court.
Oh yeah, no, Biden has a horrible record on when he passed the Violence Against Women Act, and that was he led on that at the same time that he was, like, destroying Anita Hill's character.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, so you could take just the Me Too movement stuff could kill Biden, but if you go past that, it's his centrist policies that sucked forever. You know, he's just another Obama. You go past that, he's a human gaffe factory. I mean, he says something stupid every fucking hour. I mean, you talk about a guy that's not right for our times. Do you hear some of his quotes about millennials being lazy and, you know, getting off their asses, and, you know, that just is not going to fly in 2020.
But we have a guy in the White House right now who is patently stupid, recognized as incurious, trips over his dick 18 times on the way to fucking rage tweet on the toilet. And, you know, it's like if somebody's going to give Donnie Johns a run for his money in the I say dumb shit category, Joe Biden's your guy. He is. I don't know if that's what you're Peter Douche's liaison. What do you think the DNC is like? I'm very curious what you think 2020 is going to shape up to look like, and how you think they're going to fuck Bernie out of the nomination this time.
Well, the main argument they have against him is age, because they can't really run against him on issues much. They're all going to be hijacking his platform and being as progressive as Bernie. So they can't really attack the issues that much, because they know those issues are too popular when in agreement with Bernie on that. So it's going to be a lot of these backhanded age smears. They're going to try to sell us someone like Beto as the new progressive young kid on the block kind of thing. They're going to try everything. They're going to try Biden. That didn't work. They're going to try Kamala Harris. California doesn't even like her.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. A lot of people forget this, but in 2008, when Kamala Harris ran, she ran against a guy who was, like, basically a poster child Nazi. He was, like, his positions were incredibly authoritarian. He was super conservative, and she beat him by less than 1% of a point, because she was saying borderline the exact same shit he was. It's just she won identity politics bingo in California.
Right. And the thing about her is she's 99% sound bites. I mean, she can't hold her weight in a debate very well. She's a lawyer and she prosecuted people forever, but in the Kavanaugh hearings, that was her time to shine and create a great, 2-minute soundbite for her presidential campaign, and she sucked.
Yeah.
And that was her strength.
Yeah, no, you're right. She'd had some snappy headline soundbite moments leading up to that. Like, I agree with you that the Kavanaugh, or I don't know if you're trying to say this, but it seemed like the Kavanaugh hearing was just for the highlight reel, right?
Yeah, that's all it was.
Because it was a foregone conclusion that they were going to vote the guy in. They had the votes going into it.
Right, and that's almost what MSNBC is in general for all these Democratic rising stars, They ask these guys the simplest questions, and they'll so back to 2020 stuff. They're going to find little knocks on Bernie, and then every person that comes on, they're going to ask them about that thing that Bernie did.
Right.
And it's just going to be creating this narrative over and over again. Like, well, do you think Bernie should respond to his fan that said something, in Nebraska on Twitter.
Oh man, I can see that. Do you think that's gonna be enough? Like, the rules as they stand right now say that if he's going to run, he has to run as a registered Democrat in good standing with the party. That's what the language says. I don't know what the fuck that means. Sounds Orwellian as shit to me, but.
And and there's a clause where Tom Perez can single-handedly decide that. It's up to one person, Tom Perez, to decide if Bernie can be a Democrat. I mean, it's a lot of bullshit right there.
So I don't understand how fucking Jared Beck's head hasn't exploded, for one, because he's the guy who taken on the DNC. Jimmy Dore has this theory that, and the Democrats have already said that they're going to field more candidates in 2020 than the GOP did in 2016. The theory is they're going to get fake progressives to focus on different areas of the country so that nobody is a clear frontrunner going into the convention. And then there's another rule with the superdelegates that says if it goes to a second round of voting, then the superdelegates get to vote. So if they pack the field, they focus progressives in specific, or fake progressives in specific areas to just basically run against Bernie. And that leads to a second. Like, do you give any kind of weight to that theory?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wrote about that in the book a little bit. I have a whole chapter on the Union Reform Commission and the outcome of the vote there. But, if that's their intention, I don't know. But if that isn't their intention, why wouldn't you just gotten rid of superdelegates?
Yeah,
I mean, either it's terrible optics or it's something malicious. But if they do crowd the field, it's absolutely true. If we have a lot of people staying late in the race, that no one will have enough delegate votes to win on the first ballot. So superdelegates are instantly back in play on the second ballot. And that's all but assured if enough people stay in long enough. So it's a possibility.
And then the news coverage will be all about how wild and crazy it is that for the first time in like 40 some years it's gone to a second. That's how rare it is. There's no invisible hand behind, it's just, oh god, dude, it's fucking is that what was it Laura on Uphill Media described your book as only mildly depressing? I thought it was a ringing fucking endorsement. It's fantastic.
I should put that on the back jacket next time.
Absolutely.
Mildly depressing.
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I do bring that stuff up, and it's not that I think that that's necessarily going to happen. I mean, most likely the field will still narrow, and hopefully Bernie gets enough of a jump because some of the states like California are voting early for the first time. We're voting on Super Tuesday this time around.
Yeah, that was seen as a kind of a sideways jab against Bernie and progressives in general as well, because in order to win California, you really have to money. You have to saturate the state with money, and unless Bernie's coming in loaded, I don't know. I mean, is the DNC still broke? I guess they were broke leading up, coming out of the 2016 election. Like, Hillary had basically bankrupted them.
Well, I'm not sure, but I mean, one thing's for sure, Bernie's going to come in with a pile of money. He's going to have more money than anyone running, and I think California backfired because if you look back over the last year, they were really pushing Kamala Harris on us hard, like very hard. You would see her on MSNBC all the time. Yeah. I made the whole Democratic Rising Star thing a joke, but that's because I literally would hear her name as every time her full name was Democratic Rising Star Kamala Harris.
It's like a Tribe Called Quest. You got to say the whole thing.
Right.
Okay.
So as a black woman, you know, they've used this identity politics for so long. They really thought they could push her on us as a progressive, and I think that was 100% behind California moving up the primary.
I agree with that. Do you, this is my last depressing question, and then we'll
sure it is.
We'll get to a little bit of organizational magic. I promise. Jesus fuck. Does voting in a rigged system inside a duopoly present a realistic avenue for change? Or do you not? Or do you think the system isn't rigged?
Oh, the system is rigged.
Okay.
What it comes down to is it's slow change. Like, take California, for example. You know, the system is definitely rigged against progressives, right? So
clearly,
in the DNC, you know, the state legislature for the Democratic Party, not legislature, state party, assembly, leadership, whatever, progressives actually have a majority for the first time. And so a year ago, the war for DNC chair was between Eric Bauman, the guy that used to be a lobbyist for pharmaceutical companies,
right,
lobbied against lowering our drug prices, and Kimberly Ellis, who's a legitimate progressive, right?
Yeah.
So we had a majority to win that, but the process for the voting has something akin to superdelegates.
Yeah, California has state superdelegates. I didn't know that until this last year.
Right. So that put him over the top. So, you know, do you think our state's going to pass SB 562, Medicare for All, when the guy running the Democratic Party in California lobbied against lowering drug prices? You know,
right? No, I don't. We're gonna have. We're gonna have Lauren Steiner on this weekend, and we're gonna see what she thinks about that, because she's actually been in the trenches on this fight the entire time, and
right on.
She's a fucking pit bull.
Yeah, she's super knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So who's Eric Bauman's? You know, the guy that was the DNC chair, that lobbied for firms. Who's his buddy? Anthony Redmond, the guy that sacked the bill for California.
Right. So but he's for he's for the idea of single payer. He really is. If you ask him, he'll tell you that he's for that idea. It's just when it comes time to implement it in his state, he fucking runs from it like it's a War Powers Resolution Act or some shit. I don't know.
Right. And that's exactly why Kamala Harris thought they were going to win. She did the same thing. She never supported SB 562 in her own state, and she's going to step on the national stage and say she's for Medicare for all. You know, that bullshit is going to do her in.
I agree. I don't think that anyone who isn't genuinely left of center is going to have a shot against Donald Trump in 2020, which brings me to the last question I have written down. What should be the tip of the spear for progressives? And that's something that Jamarl Thomas was asking people on Monday, and I called into the show for it. By that I mean, what's the one issue that actually gets progressives to stop screaming at each other for long enough to find out if an oligarchy will cede power through the electoral process?
To me, the single issue is Medicare for all. I think where politicians stand on that and what our legislature does on it, how they act on it, tells us everything about who they are. And it's the litmus test you have to watch closely, because like you said, they're all going to say they're for it, but you have to check their language. Are they on a pathway for it? Are they
right
in the idea? Do they think there's another curious proposal? That'll be the next thing. This next year we'll hear a lot of like alternatives that like, well, I like them both, but whoever walls first, cross them off your list of progressives. That's my litmus test. So
okay, do you think that's your litmus test? Do you think that it should be what all of these groups that are running around right now, our revolution, from our revolution to Movement for a People's Party, Justice Democrats to Progressive Independent Party, all these different groups and coalitions, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a single, one solid issue that has to bring people together to break this duopoly. And right. Do you think that Medicare for all as a thing, because in my mind, if you don't make your issue decoupling the people with the money from the political process, Medicare for all is something that, like, we're going to talk about, and we're going to keep talking about it, but we have 12 years before the climate fucking collapses on us.
Right.
And we can have universal health care.
Always going to be the donor money is the issue, without a doubt. I mean, and that's something we can all agree on. I just see, so they're all going to reject donor money for 2020, and I still don't trust them.
No.
Right? Because they've all still gotten money, and they've all still have avenues to get more money, and there's still revolving door with lobbyists and people in Congress. But I think Medicare for all, you can actually hold them to votes and force it on them, and you'll know where people stand on that one issue. And if it's the only issue we can actually get past, the progressive movement, that's all we ever get done, that's a great fucking equalizer. That's a first step on really making life fair for people, that the poor guy and the rich guy have the same fucking health care.
And I mean, I agree with you on that. I do. And I think that's by and large why the strikes over in France are having more success than they would than strikes do here, because they already have health care. They don't have to worry about, oh shit, I'm gonna get fired if I strike, and my whole family's gonna be fucked, and if one of us catches a cold, then we're out. They don't have that hanging over their head. They don't have the I need 3 jobs to make my rent in fucking the most expensive county, 4th most expensive county in the world.
4th.
Santa Cruz County is the 4th most expensive place in the world to live.
How do you like my peasant dress? No.
Right? That's not hanging over their heads. I agree with you that universal health care is a game changer. It absolutely is. I don't necessarily know if getting health care is going to offset the fact that within 15 or 20 years there's going to be 65 million coastal climate refugees.
Right, and that's there's no doubt we have all these critical issues now.
And you're up in the city, right? You're in San Francisco,
Sacramento.
Or you're in Sacramento. Okay.
I know Santa Cruz well.
So you got
school out there.
You got smoked out. But
yeah, still getting a little smoke.
Yeah. We got smoked out. There's 58,000 people up in and around Butte County that are displaced right now. We basically stopped having fire season here. I don't know. I don't have numbers in front of me as to how many people got displaced by the fire down by Malibu.
By that, he means we have fire season year round now.
Yeah.
But they're saying that climate change really does factor into that, and it's making that our new norm, because the soils aren't soaking up enough water in the off seasons to prevent these massive fires from spreading, along with the winds and other issues. But you're right, it's a mess.
I just asked Steve a week or so before that. I said, have you given, I know we give a lot of thought to doom, this, maybe that, the other, laugh at crib death a lot, but I asked him if he was prepared for 30 million climate refugees. And he looked at me, and I was like, oh, shit, he hasn't thought about that yet, because he's a thinker. He's usually on it. And then it was like 1 week later when I was on the phone going, how many people? And he said 30,000 people displaced from there in Paris.
And now it's up to 58. And now, I mean, so I agree with you that the Medicare for all is imperative, and that
absolutely
our overall quality of life will improve tremendously when worrying about how are you going to pay if you get sick is no longer an option. I think
so part of why I think it's a big tip of the spear or issue is that it does have so much. So when you see people not advocating for it hard enough, to me, it tells me where they stand. So then I would expand that to all the other issues, obviously. But it's just incredibly popular. It's how you reach these people in some of the red states. I mean...
Okay. No, I agree with that. I think that if you were to ask people in red states if they think that you should get rid of money in politics, they would also say yes. And I would think that there's probably more bipartisan citizen support of getting money out of politics than even Medicare for all. I have a very cynical view of how our electoral process works. And I don't get... I think it's great that they're going to paper ballots in Pennsylvania. I do. I think that's awesome. I think it's ironic as fuck that the Green Party, who was forged in environmental activism, were the people that were leading the lawsuit to get paper ballots.
Oh, there it is. That's why I was looking at you. Like, where is it?
But I'm glad for that. I do. I think that Tim Canova is dead on in that making election integrity as a central point of his campaign was a great idea. But I think until we've got a movement itself that is decoupled from a political party that says we're going to do XYZ, whether that's strike, riot, or fucking just opt out of everything, just completely opt out.
It's strike. Can we not go straight to riot?
No, I mean, no, I say, but unless there's a movement that's decoupled from the political process, that is focusing on we're either going to do this and we're definitely not going to do that until there's a separation between elites buying or renting politicians every few years and then those politicians legislating on their behalf.
Well, so that goes back to what you brought up earlier about France, is that, their riots are bipartisan. I mean, it's a general, it's people that are fed up with the income inequality. It all started over gas prices, but it's brought in everybody that just sees how unfair the system is, and it's radical right, radical left, middle, everybody.
They're dozers full of doo-doo. That made me so envious. Why can't we do that here?
You saw that,
that's
right?
not a real question. It's because we have drone docks on Pennsylvania Avenue.
There were videos circulating last week, handheld camera videos of people at the protest, and there was a fucking front end loader that had a bucket full of shit in it that they were dumping on the steps of their presidential residence. They drove by in a septic pump truck and sprayed it.
Did you see that? Good times.
Not fucking around.
Good times.
But see, that's way too uncivil for us. So all the media and the news would just trash these people.
Oh, if we tried to do that on Pennsylvania Avenue, we'd be murdered.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Drone docks. Swarms of drones. No, just
the little mosquito kind.
just millions.
They do. I read an article in Gizmodo like 4 years ago, and it was about micro assassination drones. Little.
Right.
Yeah. Have you seen these things? Have you seen that?
I mean, I know a little bit about drones, but I haven't seen those.
I've talked to a guy at NASA.
It packs
it's a fact.
It packs a 3-grain charge. And the drone, it's a kamikaze drone. The drone itself flies into you. It targets you right at some point on your head. And then it shoots a charge literally through your shit.
All right, I don't know specifically about this.
But this
type of
article is
drone.
in Gizmodo, like, for everybody to see, like, and it's not theoretical technology. They're bringing up that, hey, this was demonstrated at this trade show.
Like Lockheed boasting about their directed energy weapons on their website.
There's the
so
we
that's
get.
how I'm gonna die. Some sort of Peter Dow drone.
Oh my God, that'd be awesome! It would drop mimosa brunches and disappointing election returns. That's awesome, man. Well, Pat, we gotta go because we've got Savage Joy coming in like 20 minutes, and we need to get ready for that. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today, man. We really appreciate it, guys.
Talk about his book and where to get it.
The book is An Inconvenient Douche, and there's a website for that of the same name, right? It's aninconvenientdouche.com.
Hold that up again. I just switched cameras on you. Would you please hold it up again?
So,
yeah.
aninconvenientdouche.com. And there'll be a centrist version on Amazon in a week or so, but I'd still go buy it at douche.com to not give Amazon your money.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we like doing that.
Who did the artwork for that?
Squid Art. Let's see. What's his name? Dave Cohn at squidart.com.
Awesome.
Good guy.
Good deal. All right, guys. Well, thank you, Pat. Thank you for hanging out with us for another episode of Slow News Day.
You guys are awesome.
Really nice meeting you today.
And, yeah, we will talk to you soon, man.
All right, Steve, Sarah.
Have a good one.
All right, Pat. You take care.